This is Module 7 on the Information Resources Collection, what you would normally find in the library in the reference section. Let's talk generally about the Information Resources Collection in the school library. The reference collection is a critical component of the information services provided to a school. Often libraries are judged by outsiders by the quality of their reference collections because they are physically separated from the other collection and sometimes are more colorful. This isn't the main consideration you should use for developing your reference collection, but it is something to keep in mind. The most important consideration when selecting items for the collection are the needs of your students and the teachers in the school and the school curriculum. You should also keep in mind that although it's important to keep quality and current print items in your reference section, electronic information sources are becoming increasingly more prevalent and more important, particularly in the reference area of the school library. Now, in the 21st century, electronic databases, reference tools, and websites are the majority of the 21st century reference collections, but we should still not neglect the print section of the school library. Before we talk about the types of information reference sources, let's talk a little bit about information resources and information needs. Students come to the library with different information needs. Oftentimes they need information that they are going to represent in another kind of format, and they need to do some research in order to answer a particular question or to write about a particular topic. This is a pretty common kind of information need in school libraries. Then there is information for analysis. If students need to answer questions about cause and effect relationships or other higher order questions, they're going to need to have a variety of information sources in order to synthesize information in order to answer a particular higher order question. Then there is information sources that are needed to be integrated into a creative writing task, where students are asked to write a fictional account of events based on fact. These are very common information needs that are present in school library, and they are all examples of what are referred to as imposed queries. Imposed queries are very common in school library settings because imposed queries are those kinds of information needs that students come to the library with that are imposed on them by teachers and are typically part of class assignments. Students also come to the library with unimposed queries, which are referred to personal questions they might have, and they often have a lot of these and use the library to find out answers to these questions. The media specialist must respond to students' personal and academic information needs. And this is particularly problematic because students often have poorly defined queries that the library media specialist must clarify before they can help guide them to the appropriate information sources. And this is typically done in a reference interview, and the library media specialist must use communication skills in order to clarify the query the student has. And it is recommended that the KWL method, the know, want to know, and want to learn method, is a good strategy to use when working with students in defining their information query. So if a student came to the library with a question about cats, library media specialist might say, well, what do you want to know about cats? Is this for an assignment, or are you just kind of interested in cats as a pet? What do you already know about cats, and what do you need to know about cats? And what kinds of things do you want to learn about cats? And this will help you get a narrower and narrower understanding of a student's information need. So the KWL method is a very interesting and useful method for helping students with their imposed and unimposed queries in the Media Center. Now, there are different kinds of needs and different types of information resources that are designed to meet those needs. Typically, students with information need would go straight to the reference section of the library to get various tools, a dictionary, an encyclopedia, a handbook, whatever, in order to satisfy their query. Now, however, more often than not, they will use an electronic search engine such as Google to find the answer to their question. Oftentimes, they'll ask the question using a search engine on their iPhone and have no need to go to the library at all. Another information resource that is used to locate information to satisfy students' information needs are electronic databases, and this is where students can find authoritative reference resources and articles. Now, there are quite a variety of information sources that you would typically find in the reference section of a library. And this chart here provides a brief description of each of those sources and what information need and formats they are provided in. An encyclopedia, first and foremost, provides authoritative and concise information on a particular subject. And it's arranged alphabetically and typically has a subject index, and is a very good information source for students to begin the inquiry process. Students need a general overview of information. When they have that kind of information need, you can use an encyclopedia for this, and there are quality print and electronic encyclopedias available, and they should not be more than 3 years old because this kind of information changes fairly quickly. Electronic resources are updated regularly, and so typically currency is not a problem with electronic encyclopedias, but print formats should not be over 3 years old and definitely not over 5 years old. Almanacs and yearbooks are reference resources that compile facts and statistics on given topics or years. Yearbooks provide highlights of events in a given year in a given subject area. And these kinds of information resources are good for when students need brief statistical or factual information on a given country or subject or events in a given year. And most media centers have print versions of these. Also, consortia may provide electronic versions. The most up-to-date print version and a collection of these kinds of resources over about 5 or 6 years should be part of a reference collection. Atlases are geographic reference resources and contain a collection of maps covering a particular topic area or geographic region. And these resources are useful when students need information about the location of a country or information about particular geographical formations. And because the visual and large format print atlases are very common in media centers and are very useful for students to browse for information. Resources provided electronically, such as Google Maps, however, are also valuable tools. In the case of print resources, the print format for atlases should not be more than 5 years old because geographic events and political events often change our geography and our physical and our political geography. Dictionaries and thesaurus are reference resources that contain authoritative spelling, grammatical, and definitional information on words in different languages. Thesauri provide additional information about words, similar meanings, synonyms, and antonyms. These are very useful tools when students are looking for the correct spelling of a word, to understand the meaning of a word, or to extend their vocabulary by looking up similar words or opposite words. Thesauri are good tools to use when students are initially researching a topic and want to extend their vocabulary in that topic in order to develop effective keyword searches. There are print and online dictionaries and thesauri. They're very common and are of good quality. In the case of dictionaries and thesauri, the print format should again not be more than 5 years old because our language is continually changing. Directories, indexes, abstracts, and bibliographies are somewhat common in a school media center. They are resources in the format of lists, various lists of items containing information for locating the original information resource. So they are secondary reference resources. And because it's easier to update electronic resources, these items are found less and less often in the print reference section of a library, and more are a part of the electronic reference section of the library. Students, these tools are useful when students need to access a list of information on a given topic or organization, and they need resources to be directed to find out more information. And because of the need to update these items regularly, they are increasingly more common in electronic format. Print format, however, should be found in the current year, because these kinds of addresses and organizational information become outdated very quickly. Handbooks and manuals are reference tools that contain concise yet thorough application-level types of information on particular subjects. The Girl Scout Handbook or the Boy Scout Handbook are very typical kinds of handbooks and guides. Students typically like these kinds of things because if they're interested in any kind of hobbies or sports, these handbooks and guides are kind of a go-to place for finding out, very basic information about how to do things, and are very interesting for students to browse and to learn about new subject areas. Students need these kinds of tools to consult frequently while they're completing a project or activity, and these are the kinds of items that students can carry with them, and they can refer to them often, and they're mostly found in print format, and again should not be more than 5 years old. Biographical sources contain biographical information on selected people in a specific topic area in the reference section, and biographical sources are very specifically compilations of biographies of individuals and are typically organized alphabetically and contain a subject index. Biographical reference sources are not biographies. They are not individual biographies. They are typically compilations of biographies in a typical subject area, such as a biography of the presidents of the United States. Students need this kind of information when they are looking for initial information on a particular person or in a particular topic area. And biographical references are common in print format, but also library consortia provide this information in electronic format. Again, should not be more than 5 years old. Now we have done a brief overview of the different types of items found in a reference collection. Now we're going to think about how to develop a reference collection for a school library. First and foremost, the reference collection should follow basic reference collection principles in that the collection should be developed and evaluated collaboratively. The collection should support the curriculum, should meet the diverse learning needs of students with multiple abilities, cultural and linguistic diversity. And collection should be comprised of current, high quality, and authoritative items from noted collection development resources and be present in the library in a variety of formats. Some collection development tools that we will be using in this class are the AASL Guide for School Library Media Program Development, the H.W. Wilson Elementary, Middle, and Senior High School Core Collection that's available in the Wilson Web database, School Library Journal. This is available in your Academic Search Premier database and contains critical reviews of print and electronic resources. The Horn Book, that's one of the databases that is in the Topper Information Portal. These are extensive reviews of children's material. ALA Book Lists, contain reviews of children's materials, including reference books bulletin, and críticas, which are reviews of English of materials that are predominantly in Spanish. So, when developing a reference collection for your school media center, use standard reference collection criteria. Provide materials in different formats, and typically materials in electronic format have additional evaluation criteria related to the technology that you also need to consider. And then use standard reference deselection criteria, meaning you need to think about the currency of your reference collection. For example, encyclopedias, almanacs, science and technology references should not be more than 5 years old if they are part of your collection. Now let's look at some specific evaluation criteria for information resources. First is content and scope. And this is where you are evaluating the item as to its intellectual contents, specifically the breadth and the depth of the material in terms of intellectual content, and also the quality of the content. And typically information about the content and scope of an item is contained in the preference, the introduction, and in the table of contents. You also need to consider accuracy, authority, and bias of a reference resource, and this is where you evaluate the reputation of the publisher and the credentials of the author. And the introduction typically will provide information about the authors and also the reputation of the publishers. You also need to evaluate the usability, and this usually is in the form of the arrangement and presentation of the item. How easily can the information be accessed in the item? Is it organized alphabetically, chronologically? Is it classified by subject, and is there an index? And a brief scan of the table of contents, the text of the item, and the index pages can provide you information with the usability of arrangement and presentation. You also need to consider the relation of the item that you're evaluating to similar works that are already part of the collection, because you are going to have to make decisions about what to purchase or what to weed. And so you need to try to evaluate how adding this item to your collection adds value to your present collection. What does this item have that the other items don't have? So a quick scan of the reference shelf and current databases should provide information about related works. Also very important to consider is the timeliness and permanence of your item, and this is where you evaluate how current your item is and how long lasting your item will be in terms of its cost. So you need to check the edition and publication date, as well as the recent professional activities of the authors that are mentioned in the introduction. And so this will give you some indication as to how current the information is that's provided in the source and how long lasting the information will be in your library collection. Cost typically is one of the most important criteria, but shouldn't always be the only criteria that's under consideration. You need to evaluate the cost of the item compared with its potential use and how it will support the curriculum. And if you're uncertain about whether or not that the purchase is going to have a lasting effect for your collection, check with colleagues. This is where collaboration will be very important. Now, in terms of specialized formats, you need to think about some certain format considerations for electronic resources. Although CD-ROMs and DVDs are not a large part of reference collections anymore, you need to think about content and scope. This can be found in the publisher's or vendor's descriptive materials. You need to think about authority, accuracy, and bias, and this is also found in the publisher's materials that accompany these resources. Arrangement presentation information is found by a quick scan of the disk content map. Also, you need to see if there is a search function This will help users access information regardless of how it's arranged. Relation to similar works, check your current print and electronic holdings for similar works. Timeliness and permanence, look at the copyright date. That usually indicates the currency of the document as well as the publisher's or vendor's materials, and then again the cost. The cost of the items must balance with their potential use. And electronic resources are often a less expensive alternative for print materials, but check with the vendor for the price of updates and upgrades to your electronic resources. Now, for internet resources, there are also special evaluative format considerations. For content and scope information, look on the website of the information resource. Look at the introduction page and the content map. For authority, accuracy, and bias, evaluate the website sponsorship. Make sure that the site is, if it's a commercial site, that is well stated and advertised. If it's an educational site, what educational organization? What are the site sponsors' authority? How do they have credibility for this information? And is there a bias implied by the sponsor? In terms of arrangement, presentation, scan the website's content map and their search capabilities to see how easily information can be accessed on the electronic information resource. In terms of relation to similar works, check reviews of websites and evaluate other similar kinds of sites. For timeliness and permanence, look for revision dates on the web pages to evaluate currency as well as policies regarding how the site is maintained. And as for cost, the cost of the items must be balanced with their potential use. Some websites are free for users, although they may have advertising, and other websites depend on subscriptions. You also need to think about diversity considerations when you are evaluating information resources. You need to take into consideration the cultural and linguistic diversity of the community that you are serving. So include reference materials that are inclusive of world cultures and languages, and assist the cultural and linguistic diversity in the school and community, and select reference materials that mirror that diversity. If you have a Spanish population, make sure that you have a number of different Spanish-English dictionaries and picture dictionaries. Multiple intelligence. You need to provide for the different kinds of learning styles of the population that you serve. So providing reference materials in different formats, some of which have interactivity, graphic, and multimedia representations of information, these all can address different ways of learning. And again, multiple abilities. You need to provide reference materials in multiple formats that address varied reading levels and are in compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act, and therefore you will address multiple abilities. You need to assess the multiple abilities that exist in your school and make sure you provide resources to meet those abilities. Oftentimes electronic resources will have functions built in to the resources that provide for multiple abilities, such as reading the text out loud, the written text out loud, and providing narrative description of visual information. So when you're thinking about evaluation criteria for information resources, you need to think generally that specialized information resources are often expensive additions to the library. So evaluation of these materials becomes important because of their high cost. And using evaluation criteria for print and electronic resources and giving special consideration to the diverse needs of students will facilitate effective collection development for your reference section. And some final comments about print resources, specifically in terms of information resources. Your print information collection, general and specialized information materials will be expected to be used very heavily in your library for fact-finding, bibliographic research, and sometimes just general browsing. They also can be used for quick and accurate identification of needed information. They should be located in a distinct location that's convenient for all library users, right there up front for everybody to use. Generally, these items don't circulate, so you will be able to have them at everybody's fingertips. Research indicates that print resources are used most in the early grades, and this might be that print resources provide students who are at the concrete level of operation, very young readers, for a very tactile orientation to the organization of reference information resources. Electronic resources are used more and more at the middle and high school level. Print resources can include titles that are rich in graphic information or topical interest and might be items of high interest for students to browse on their own. And I have lots of favorites. I'm sure you do too. The Atlas of the Ocean is one of my favorite resources, as is the Encyclopedia of Dinosaurs. So that is a general overview of collection development, specifically for your print resource collection, evaluation and selection criteria, and there are some additional resources that can provide you with more in-depth information, and that's located here. Also make sure that you take advantage of the collection development tools that are provided for us through Topper Information Portal, through Academic Search Premier and Wilson Web. Thank you very much for your attention to this module. Please post your questions to the discussion boards, and I look forward to talking with you more about this online.